Hello everyone, it's Jean from Inky Studio. I am here today with a project in which we're going to turn this humble paper bag into a really beautiful shabby chic lace-filled little mini journal. And I'm going to take you from beginning to end and show you how I put it together and some of the processes that I use to decorate this with. Before we begin, though, I did have a question, and I decided that maybe I should start answering questions here on the video instead of in the comment section. I think it's maybe a little easier for people to keep track of those answers. But she wanted to know how I made my Edith Holden journal and how I connected the two pages. So what I was doing as I was connecting two whole pages that did not have a fold. So they were large pages to put together, and I used strips of parchment paper. I found parchment paper to be nice and heavy, but not too heavy. It just was a very strong way to connect two pieces of larger pages. But the parchment paper I had was kind of bright. So what I did then was I just took my applicator from my distress ink, I inked off some excess, and this lightly went across the paper until it kind of came down to a less bright shade, the shade that I was, see, I shouldn't have done that. I should have did this first and then do this, and then I can avoid this splotch. So we just do it like so. And that way you can tame down any kind of paper that seems to be a little bright for you. And I actually did use this process in making this journal, and the paper that I used on the outside, I just went through and did a little bit of that dry brushing just to tame down the brightness of it to make it a little bit more vintage looking. So I just wanted to explain that to you. And if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to ask, because sometimes if it's on your mind, then it's probably on other people's mind too. So let's get started with transforming our little humble lunch bag. I'm going to start with a standard lunch bag, and I believe it's 11 by 15. And I'm going to punch out the bottom and fold down the little flaps, fold inside those little flaps on the side so that it's sort of like a tag-like shape there at the end. And I'm going to cut that off, and that will cut off the bulk that's at the bottom of the lunch bag, and we're just left with a flat folded piece of lunch bag. And inside here on these two flaps, I do plan to glue them down entirely, but before that I want to leave a little bit of it open, so I'm just going to glue the very insides just to maintain the shape of the bag, and I'm leaving it so that I can slip something inside between those two layers if I need to or want to. And then I'm folding down one side about 1.5 inches, and this is going to be the flap that closes up the journal, and the other I'm going to fold up not a little bit right before that fold line so it can fold easily, and that's where I'm going to sew in the papers for the journal. But I'm not creasing them super hard, just enough so that I can see the creases. I'm going to have pockets on both ends eventually. And so I'm going to cover the two sides, and in this instance I am going to also ink all around, and I have found ground espresso to be the best if you're working with craft paper or brown paper for it to show. I'm tearing the paper because I kind of like that rough edge, but you don't need to tear it, of course. And when I glue this in, I'm leaving a little border all the way around to kind of show the lunch bag color around that paper. And of course ink around my papers, but that's optional. And I'm going to use a glue stick for most of the gluing, and I love the Scotch Create glue stick. It's my favorite one. Trying to figure out which is the top and which is the bottom, or the front and back. And after I glue this on though, and this is true for any glue stick, there's usually little spots around the edges that might not get glued down. And so I'm going to feel for those, and it's usually the corners that usually need a little extra. And sometimes before I even glue down the paper, I'll go around the rim with my glitter glue. And now we're going to reinforce that fold so that we can see it on this side of the paper before we glue on the back paper. Now after we've glued the back paper on, the smaller flap there, I'm going to reinforce with some cardstock because I plan to be putting in an eyelet there. And the paper by itself just isn't quite heavy enough, I feel. Now you don't have to have a pocket on this side. You could definitely just glue it all together and then put the eyelet through both layers of paper. But even then, I think I would still put in a little bit of reinforcement. Now you don't want your ephemera to fall into your journal, so you can put down a little layer of glue, but I am going to sew down that line there, and on this side I will eventually sew a little bit there. But of course you can also just glue that one, even though this side would have less probably a chance of falling down. I've sewed the one side. I'm going to wait on this one because I'm going to put in some lace in between these two layers here. And then as I put the lace in, then I will go ahead and close up that flap all the way. Could have used my fabric tack for this, but the glitter glue did work fine. You could also sew along there to secure your lace and flap. I'm leaving the top one open for now, the top flaps open, just to see what I end up doing before I sew down on the left flap. Now we're going to put an eyelet in on this side, and this is where we will eventually thread our ribbon or whatever closure you have for the journal. The pocket opens really flat, so it's easy to get in there with your tools. You shouldn't have a problem with that. Now I'm going to decorate the front, and I'm going to use lace as photo corners. And this is, I think they call it Battenberg, I'm not sure. It's from an old collar from a vintage piece of clothing. So I have in here where you need to have enough solid spaces to glue down your lace without it, showing through. You can also just take a fabric of lace, cut out little portions, making sure you have some thick places there where you can put glue down, and you can also use that as photo corners, and using it on opposite sides helps that piece of ephemera to stay in there. But I just went ahead and used another piece of that collar, and just making sure I'm gluing the solid places. And I like to use glitter glue for lace rather than Fabri-Tac because it has least likely to seep through and show on the other side. And so now this little piece of ephemera can be slipped in and out. Just going through my vintage lace, and for pockets I try to choose something that has, you know, some solid work on it, just to make it more stable when you glue it in. And when I shop for vintage lace, I try to get a variety of different ones, some that are open weave, some that are closer. This particular lace had holes in it so you could thread in a ribbon if you wanted to. And so instead of gluing this in between the two flaps, I'm just gluing it on the page itself. And since I decided to do that, I went ahead and sewed in the left pocket there on the left. And just auditioning some different pieces of ephemera, how I might want them to look. I'm going to add some fabric down here at the bottom, just to add some more interest to it. I think the fabric helps the eye to make sense of the lace a little bit better so that you can see it's two different laces, and I think it just enhances that look. Could have used paper as well or something like that, but I think the fabric really helps with that. And later on we're going to be altering these pieces of ephemera and adding things to them. That will be in part 2 video. Now I'm going to be working on the left side. And I thought at first I would put in a belly band of lace. And then I thought maybe a pocket of lace. But in the end, I cut the corner of a napkin. And there was, I put a little stamp there in the corner, sewed around it. I liked the fringe. Then I put some lace on the bottom. So this is what I ended up putting there. And I have these brads that have a little bit of bling in them. They have a little crystal center. So something a little shiny. And oftentimes your fabric will be such a close weave, you'll have to punch a hole in it to get your brad in. But sometimes the brads are sharp enough to go through. It just depends. And then I just decided that I would like this brad to go through the paper as well, not just only the fabric. Don't know why, just decided to. So I'm looking a way to make a hole, an impression of a hole down there, so I know where to put the brad into. And I'm only going to put it through the one layer. Or I'm not putting it in the outside layer. I guess there are 2 layers there because of the fold, but I'm not putting it to the outside so that my pocket is more open there. And then we're just going to glue around to secure the pocket. And voila, we have a little place to add more ephemera. I'm going to addition a few more pieces in here. And so our little journal is taking shape. I hope you'll join me in part 2, and we will be adding more things to the cover. And like I say, we'll be working with the ephemera that's on the inside to complete our journal. So thanks so much for viewing. I hope you have a great and crafty day. Talk to you later. Bye.